All right, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the San Francisco Board of Supervisors Land Use and Transportation Committee meeting for Monday, February 13th, 2017. My name is Mark Farrell. I'll be chairing this committee. I'm joined by our committee vice chair, Supervisor Aaron Peskin, as well as Supervisor Katie Tang. I want to thank Jim Smith and Phil Jackson from SFG TV for covering today's meeting, as well as the clerk of our committee, Ms. Elisa Somera. Madam Clerk, do we have any announcements?
Yes, please make sure to silence all cell phones and electronic devices. Completed speaker cards and copies of any documents to be included as part of the file should be submitted to the clerk. Items acted upon today will appear on the February 28th Board of Supervisors agenda unless otherwise stated.
All right, Madam Clerk, what do you call item number one?
Item number one is an ordinance amending the Environment Code to update the green building requirements for the design, construction, and operation of city buildings and making appropriate findings.
Okay, I think we have Ms. Raphael here, for the head of our Department of the Environment, to speak on this item.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Chair Farrell, and thank you, members of the Land Use Committee, for hearing this item. We are ready for the overheads for the presentation. Okay. What you have before you are amendments to Chapter 7 of the Environment Code. This has been sponsored by the Mayor and also by Board President Breed. So this ordinance is not a new ordinance. It, in fact, it originated back in 1998 when we had our first green building program in place. It morphed and changed in 2004 to adopt LEED Silver as the minimum building standard for municipal buildings. In 2011, it changed again and updated to adopt LEED Gold as the building standard. This change was also the same as what was going on in the private sector, where also LEED Silver to LEED Gold is now the standard citywide. There's a context in the reason that we're having this ordinance come before you today, and that is that the building code has changed not only for the city but statewide. So you have the California Energy Code as well as the California State Building Code, Cal Green, all have been updated, and our ordinance needs to correspond to that. In addition, LEED, Leadership in Energy and Environmental Design, has version 3, which expired, and now has version 4. So at one level, this is a cleanup ordinance to make sure that we're in context, but we're also using it as an opportunity to clarify and look to the future. So how are we doing? This is just a quick snapshot onto how the city has done in terms of implementing its LEED ordinance since 2004. To date, we have 51 municipal LEED buildings. 9 of those are platinum. This is one of the largest municipal portfolios in the United States. Some specific examples: Laguna Honda Hospital is an example of the first LEED certified hospital in the U.S. California Academy is the world's largest double LEED platinum building for new construction and operation and maintenance. The Airport Terminal 2 is the first terminal to be LEED Gold in the U.S. Here in the building we find ourselves, City Hall is the oldest LEED Platinum building in the United States, and with the retrofits that we did on this building, the taxpayers as well as the employees can benefit from 25% energy savings and 825,000 gallons of water saved. So those are just some of the benefits. And finally, our new public safety building, you may not know, not only does it is it home to our police and fire, but it has 3 living roofs, rainwater harvesting, gray water reuse, and water-saving fixtures. All make this the most water-efficient building in the city's municipal portfolio. And this was designed before we even knew we were in a drought. So having LEED as our goal pushes us and makes us look towards the future and makes us resilient and ready for whatever's to come. So the proposed changes to this ordinance are in 3 basic buckets: updates, which I alluded to, clarifications to make this a clearer and easier to implement ordinance, and finally, additions to look forward to the future. So the proposed updates, the California Energy Code has been modified. We need to point to the most recent code. The California Green Building Code has been updated. We again need to point to their most recent code in our ordinance. And finally, LEED itself has expired version 3 and moved on to version 4, which is much more heavily focused on energy and energy efficiency, which will help us as we try and meet the statewide goals of zero net energy building. The LEED 3 to LEED 4 was perhaps the area that gave our fellow department heads the most heartburn. They were concerned about what would the cost implications be. And so we worked very closely with Public Works and with the building construction team, with the consultants, to do an analysis of actual city projects to see what would the impact be on the building should we go from LEED version 3 to LEED version 4. For new construction, it was almost a wash. It was a 0.8% increase in the cost of the building. For renovations, we found that we get a range of impacts depending on how we accommodate the solar photovoltaic system, anywhere from a 2.5% to a 5% increase in costs. We believe that these costs can be mitigated to a large degree by upfront integrated planning, and yet it's important to go into this with our eyes open, that there might be a small cost impact as we move forward. The clarifications that we put in place. The first one is that we shifted the applicability of this ordinance to have a threshold of 10,000 square feet rather than 5,000 square feet. Citywide, that threshold is 25,000 square feet, so we're still leading by example, but we're acknowledging the fact that very, very small projects probably have a high cost burden to get on LEED certification, so we're asking those smaller projects to join us in the spirit of LEED, if not certification. The second area of clarification had to do with the port. It turns out the Port of San Francisco has its own building code, and there was some confusion as to whether or not Chapter 7 applied to the port. We are very explicit in Chapter 7 that Sections 705 and 706, which might be considered redundant with the Port Building Code, are in effect not in effect for the port, but the port has changed their building code to make sure that it is consistent with Chapter 7. There's a part of this program which is the waiver process, so that if a city department feels like it cannot meet the standards set forth in Chapter 7, they can apply to get a waiver from either the certification for LEED or specific elements that are in that certification. And for the port, we have put in place a process in the port where they will do their own waivers, and the director of the port will have the authority to grant those waivers, but we've instituted a transparent decision-making process where the task force will issue a recommendation to the port will make a decision, and that decision will then be made public both at the Environment Commission and the Port Commission. So we've clarified and we've increased transparency when it comes to the port, and they're an incredibly enthusiastic and willing partner. And the last clarification, which was very important, is that we made it very clear that this ordinance does apply to major renovations and tenant improvements in leased space. So, for example, when the San Francisco Employees Retirement System or the Health Service System remodeled their location, they do it now with a LEED checklist and with LEED certification, and that way the taxpayers, the employees, the visitors, all are ensured to have the benefits of a LEED certified building. So that was then the amendments and the clarifications, so the updates and clarifications, and now looking towards the future, how can this ordinance prepare us for what's coming ahead? How can we look ahead at what the state of California is putting in place? What about our own climate goals? So our proposed additions are that we are asking each project to do a feasibility on what would it take to build that project to be zero net energy. Zero net energy is a statewide goal where the energy budget for the building is the same as the energy generated on site through renewables. It doesn't make sense to do that for large, tall, skinny buildings, but certainly for 3 or few stories, that is a place where we may be able to achieve zero net energy even before the 2030 deadline that is put place by the state of California. We're also asking projects to do a cost-benefit analysis for solar plus storage. How do we take the solar that's on site, meld it with batteries so that we can use that energy in the evening or use that energy in the event of an earthquake or other disaster? And finally, we're looking at what is actually going in those buildings, and it turns out that the furniture that is in the buildings, in fact, the furniture you're sitting on right now, often contains toxic chemicals that are off-gassing into the space, specifically brominated flame retardants. And so we're putting language in the ordinance to give the Department of the Environment the ability to draft regulations along with city departments to change the procurement of furniture in those wonderful LEED buildings. So that's a snapshot of this ordinance in terms, as I said, there's a larger context of why we need to do this now. We've got amendments that include clarifications, that include updates, and includes this idea of looking to the future. So any questions you might have, I'm open.
Colleagues, any questions right now for Ms. Raphael? Okay. Thanks very much. We will open this up to public comment. Anybody wish to comment on item number 1? Okay. Or do you wish to comment? Thank you.
Hello, I'm here to support, my name is Laura Tam, I'm with SPUR, and we're here to support the proposed update to the Environment Code. San Francisco, of course, is an early adopter of green buildings in this, and has led the country, the city, and other cities toward innovative green building, including the private sector, sort of creating the market for the private sector to follow. It's gone on to be a success all around the world, and so we can take pride in that. And this update to this ordinance includes some important true-ups to stay current and continue to lead in this area. The gold standards for green building have evolved, and so we need to keep up and keep pushing the envelope. And San Francisco wants to be a leader in this area. We can continue to do so with some of the amendments proposed in this ordinance. Finally, we are especially pleased to support some of the key pieces that Director Raphael mentioned at the end, the idea of making the buildings zero net energy, which is a state goal that the state doesn't fully know how to execute, so we can show how to do that here in San Francisco. Doing on-site battery storage and paired with renewable energy. This is very important as our energy system becomes more renewable. We have to figure out how to keep the electrons that we generate from the sun. And it's something that we recommended in a report that we at SPUR worked on over the last 2 years that looked at what the Bay Area and what cities in the Bay Area can do to help advance a fossil-free region. We especially recommended that this idea be pursued, and so to see it incorporated into municipal green building policy is a great idea. As well, we're very happy to see the ordinance include the requirement to implement the Better Roofs Ordinance, which we worked very hard on over the last few years, and we're so pleased to see. So incorporated into such sites as the public safety building. So in short, we're very supportive of the proposed update and look forward to seeing it implemented. Thanks.
Thanks very much. And I apologize. I have actually 2 other speaker cards, Rich Berman and Brandon McNeely. So if either of you are here, please feel free to come on up.
Good afternoon, Supervisors. Rich Berman with Port of San Francisco, and I'm just here to express my support of the revisions. The Port has worked closely with the Department of the Environment in carving out some of these revisions, and they've been a fantastic partner, not only in this, but in establishing citywide goals. They've been leaders for us in establishing our own climate action goals, which are now reflected in the Port's strategic plan. And we're very appreciative of the ability to incorporate especially 705 and 706 sections of the ordinance into the Port Building Code. If there are any questions about that, I'd be happy to answer them.
Thanks very much. Next speaker.
Good afternoon. My name is Brendan McEnany, and I'm the Director of U.S. Green Building Council's Northern California office. I'm here today to support the proposed green building requirements for municipal buildings. San Francisco has long been a leader on environmental issues, and the proposed requirements further that leadership by ensuring that new construction projects reduce their environmental impacts. Our organization's LEED rating system has become the leading choice for evaluating a building's environmental impacts and certifying improvements that the building has made. While this standard has been voluntarily adopted throughout the private sector, many of the earliest adopters were in the public sector, local governments who saw the financial benefit of reduced energy bills, the benefit of improving local environmental conditions, and the human benefit of healthier and more productive working spaces. Local government leadership in raising the ceiling for building performance has in turn helped raise the floor with advances in California's Green Building Code and Energy Code. Just as those codes are regularly reviewed and updated to reflect technological innovations and market advances, the LEED rating system is also regularly updated. The proposed requirement would implement LEED version 4, which represents the most current version of best practice in building environmental performance. The state of California has also expressed its intent that all new buildings in the state will be zero net energy by 2030, producing from clean sources as much energy as they consume. The proposed requirements would take a sensible step in that direction by mandating a performance standard consistent with the state policy direction. With so much uncertainty at the federal level, it's more important than ever to push for local leadership on environmental issues. I thank the City and County of San Francisco for its continued leadership and look forward to working with community members and city staff to make sure municipal buildings meet a high level of performance. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anybody else wish to comment on item number 1?
Yeah, my name's Otto Duffy. I'm a neighborhood activist nearby here. I'm actually here for the next item, but I think at some point, somewhere in our great bureaucracy and our great system, somebody has to say something a little bit realistic about this building and what's going on with it, which is to say, yeah, let's say we build a zero net energy building, but all of the economic activity, all of the people that go in and out, they're embedded in an environment and an economy that's 70% based on fossil fuels, remain 70% based. So we're actually increasing the fossil fuel use. And and that's the shortcoming of, it's not beautiful, in other words. It has a huge wart on it.
Thanks very much. Anybody else wish to comment on item number 1? Seeing none, public comment is closed. Colleagues, any questions or comments? If not, a motion to move this item forward?
So moved.
Okay. You have a motion by Supervisor Peskin with recommendation, Supervisor?
Yes, sir.
We can do that. And second by Supervisor Tang. We can take that without objection. Madam Clerk, would you call item number 2, please?
Item number 2 is an ordinance amending the planning code to allow amusement arcades in all south of Market and eastern neighborhoods mixed-use districts, except for the residential enclave districts, and making appropriate findings.
Okay, thanks very much. We have Supervisor Kim's office to speak.
Hi, April Veneracion from Supervisor Kim's office. Thank you, Land Use Committee members. Last week we heard this item and we requested and asked for your continuance so that the city attorney could prepare amendments specific to allowing the arcade use or removing the prohibition of arcade use only in the SOMA Service Light Industrial District, and we have revised legislation from the city attorney, and so we asked for your amendments to the original legislation, that it only be limited to SOMA Service Light Industrial, and we have legislation prepared.
Do you have copies?
Oh, sorry. I only have 2. And then the copies for 2 copies.
Do you think maybe you could walk us through the amendments here before?
Yeah.
Can't vote on them without understanding where they are?
Originally, the legislation had the planning and amusement arcades prohibition deleted in the South of Market and Eastern neighborhoods mixed-use districts, so all of the mixed-use neighborhoods in Eastern neighborhoods. But we've prepared legislation to have the prohibition removed only in the South of Market Service Light Industrial District. And this is what's before you is an amendment of the whole, so it doesn't show the original places where it was originally allowed.
So, okay, I have some crossouts here and so forth. This is amendment of the whole, though, and we can take this and move it forward today. Okay. So it's just in the title, as well as it looks like line 17 and 18 on page 2.
Correct.
You have an extra period on page 1 at line 17.
Appreciate Supervisor Peskin's attention to detail here.
And Deputy City Attorney John Givner, not reflected in any crossouts. There are some sections that were originally going to be amended in the first ordinance that were just removed from this version altogether. Some changes to zoning control tables that no longer need to be changed because the ordinance has been scaled back.
Okay. Okay, colleagues, any questions, comments for our sponsor and team?
Less is more. I'm fine with these changes.
Okay, we will open this up to public comment then. Thank you. So I have Henry Karnilowicz and Hassan Mahmood on item number 2. If there's anybody else that wishes to speak, everyone please line up, and we'll do this for the next items as well. Everyone will have 2 minutes to speak, and if you're not up right now, if you could line up on the far wall, that would be great.
Good afternoon, Supervisors. Henry Karnilowicz, President of the South of Market Business Association. You know, I remember as a kid I used to love to go to the local cafe in my hometown and play pinball. But it wasn't just to play the games, but also was to meet people there. So it was really a fun time to have on a Friday evening or even Saturdays and so forth. So it was really a great time to spend with friends. And so we feel it's the same thing now. We don't have those pinball machines anymore. We have more sort of electronic and techie sort of stuff that I don't play myself. But, you know, this is great for the community. It's great for the young generation to be able to come and spend some time with their friends. And, you know, but also what it does, it makes the district more vibrant. And on top of that, city benefits because of the money that will come in from the folks who will be spending at these places that will have these entertainment, what do you call it? Arcades, amusement arcades, sorry. Anyway, so I urge you to please support this. Thank you.
Thanks. Next speaker, please.
As I was here last week asking for your support, I'm here to do the same again. Just kind of piggyback on everything that we said last week. Just, you know, this is a concept that's kind of resurging all over the country here, from New York to Portland to Southern California. And I think that it'd be helpful to get this in our city now. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Anybody else wish to comment on item number 2? Okay, seeing none, public comment is closed. Colleagues, we have an amendment whole in front of us.
I'll make a motion then to adopt the amendments that were just discussed and then send forward with positive recommendation to the full board.
Okay, motion by Supervisor Tang, second by Supervisor Peskin. We can take those without objection. Madam Clerk, would you call items 3 and 4 together, please?
Item numbers 3 and 4 are an ordinance and resolution that waive fees and exempt requirements for a project at 950 to 974 Market Street in exchange for a dedication of property at 180 Jones Street, establishing the 180 Jones Street Affordable Housing Fund and accepting a $2.7 million gift to this fund, approving and authorizing an agreement for the conveyance of property, and making appropriate findings.
Okay, thank you very much. And these items sponsored by Supervisor Kim.
Yes.
We'll open up to her to speak in the beginning.
Thank you. I know that the committee heard this item last Monday, and just wanted to summarize the ordinances that are before us today. First of all, I do want to recognize many of our community leaders and residents from the Tenderloin and Mid-Market area that were part of working on negotiating the deal that is before us today with 950 Market. The ordinance that is before us today was an outcome of discussions that the community had with the developer Group I out of concerns that below market rate units for home ownership wouldn't be accessible to the vast majority of residents that live in the neighborhood. Due to that, they were able to identify a site, one of the last developable vacant parcels in the Tenderloin, 180 Jones, which is currently a parking lot. And they worked with the developer to actually purchase and acquire the site and dedicated the city to build at least 60 units of step-up affordable housing for current single-room occupancy residents. Many of you know that this is a huge housing issue here in San Francisco. We have many residents that are long-term single-room occupancy residents that are ready to move into what we call step-up housing, other types of affordable housing, freeing up single-room occupancy rooms for other individuals that may be more recently homeless as future housing for our formerly homeless residents here in San Francisco. The project sponsor for 950 Market worked very closely with the community office to purchase this land and dedicate additional affordable housing funds specifically to build out 180 Jones. The primary project in the 180 Jones project is important to the revitalization of the Mid-Market and Tenderloin area. We also approximate the value of the land purchase and contribution to the fund at approximately 25% of the on-site affordable housing obligation. I had mentioned last week at Monday's Land Use Committee when questions arose about the value of this deal, that our office works very hard to push the envelope with all of our private developers to ensure that we are sharing in the value conferred to land and building the maximum affordable housing possible. But also we want to make sure that we are consistent with our developments. So we crafted this deal looking at a project that passed unanimously at this Board of Supervisors last May of 2016, which is the 1066 Market site, otherwise known as the Shorenstein parking lot. In a similar deal where residents were concerned that they would not be able to qualify at the income levels for below market rate rental units, residents in that deal also asked that developer to acquire another parcel that is very meaningful to the Tenderloin neighborhood, 101 Hyde Street, which is currently the old post office building, previously one of the only ways that our escrow tenants were able to receive mail-in communication, and to purchase that site from a property owner that had entitled to build 100% market rate units. That land has now been dedicated through Shorenstein to the city, and they also dedicated an affordable housing gift to help jumpstart the pre-development for that site so that it will also be 100% affordable housing. On top of this, because of some of the historic nature of the building, given that it had previously housed transgender, lesbian, gay, retail, and entertainment sites, the Compton's Historic District Committee worked with the developer to also seed and create a $300,000 fund dedicated to the city to support the creation of Compton's District TLGB. The money will go towards creating this cultural heritage district in the Tenderloin, create a transgender-focused community facility in the Tenderloin, and also support one or more transgender-focused commercial or nonprofit storefront in the Compton's neighborhood. So the legislation before us today codifies many of the components that I talked about, and I also want to recognize members of the audience that worked on this together with the developer, the 950 Market Coalition, which includes Central City SRO Collaborative, Market Street for the Masses, the Compton's Coalition, and also want to recognize the city side, the staff of the Mayor's Office of Housing, Kate Hartley, Olson Lee, and Jeff Buckley, who are here today, our Department of Real Estate, the Planning Department, OEWD staff, our city attorney, and of course, want to thank our project sponsor, Joy Au, and Group I and her team for working so closely with our community. We do have updated numbers based on some of the questions and concerns that came up at Land Use Committee today, which I know that committee members have. And I just received additional amendments that we do want to make to item number 4 that were a result of some discussion with MOHCD to codify that we intend for this affordable housing development to be offered to individuals and families who have an income of 40% AMI or lower. We also intend that the future affordable housing at the site provide a preference for tenants who have lived in city-funded supportive housing for at least 3 years. And we also acknowledge that MOHCD has not assembled all the capital subsidy for the future affordable housing development on the site, but that we will make the best efforts to secure the balance of the local gap funding. So just to be clear, because there were concerns about a gap in the affordable housing project, there's also a gap for 101 Hyde as well. While we did push as far as we could with both developers were able to commit to a value of 25% off-site, which is greater than at what was previously required at 20%. However, it wasn't enough to cover the gap on both deals. But we do have an analysis that shows that the gap for this project, 180 Jones, is far lower than the gap for 101 Hyde, which this board, again, fully supported in May of 2016 last year. So with that, These are the amendments that I'm hoping that the committee will make. I will make sure that each of the committee members get a copy of these amendments during public comment. And if there are no further questions, Chair Farrell, I just ask that we open it for public comment.
Thank you, Supervisor Kim. So, and thank you for those amendments, and we'll be taking care of them after public comment. Last week at our last hearing on this item, I think the rest of my colleagues on this committee would join me in this, wasn't comfortable moving this ordinance forward with the information we had in front of us. And, perhaps I'm too used to being at Budget Committee when we have Harvey Rose presenting with analysis for the Board of Supervisors. But the last analysis that we had at the committee meeting last week was a memo from our planning department dated December 9th showing that the ordinance before us conferred a $2.5 million additional profit to the developer. And again, to be clear, I'm not here to decide what type of profit a developer makes on a project, but I am here to make sure that development deals made outside of a development agreement process are fully vetted. If we're exempting projects from requirements that save them money, it's an important policy decision, and I'm willing to entertain those, especially when we talk about a community that really came forward here and wanted affordable housing in their neighborhood. But I want to make sure the city's getting an adequate benefit in return. I am always going to make sure that the city of San Francisco gets the best deal possible. And quite frankly, the way that we went about this, we were holding housing hostage in our city, and I don't think it's the right approach. Last week when I raised questions about the profit, nor our departments nor the developer could come to an agreement upon what those numbers were. So we didn't have enough information in front of us. And I do want to say thank you to both the Mayor's Office of Housing, our planning department, the developer, for over the last week working with my office, and I believe my colleagues as well, to do a further dive on the analysis. Up to about an hour and a half ago, I was on the phone running through Excel spreadsheets with the developer's finance team to really unpack the data that was in front of us. And the reality is that today, compared to a month and a half or 2 months ago, we have completely different numbers from our city staff. I do want to run through those numbers, but quite frankly, from a process perspective and from a land use committee perspective, let alone the full Board of Supervisors perspective, that simply doesn't work. So going forward, Supervisor Tang and I hope the rest of my colleagues will join us, we'll be introducing legislation to make sure that we have a full analysis of these projects done before they come to our land use committee, where there are numbers that our city departments will stand behind, both at the time of production as well as 2 or 3 months down the road. And to make sure that, again, if we do not have projects going through a full vetting of a development agreement, that we make sure we have full information here at the Land Use Committee before approving these projects. So with that, I know my colleagues actually have comments that they want to make, but after that, I'm going to be asking both Ms. Hartley, Kate Hartley, who sent a memo to us about some updated numbers, to come up and talk through those numbers for us. Ms. Rogers from our planning department, some additional items if you might want to add in there, and to give you the opportunity to walk through those numbers as well. So we'll be asking them to come up and talk through the numbers and the differences from a few months ago. But before I do that, why don't I turn over to my colleagues, and first Supervisor Peskin.
Thank you, Chair Farrell. I want to in some way echo the chairman's words as it relates to process, but to put them in a little bit of context. And let me start by saying that over the last number of years, the vast majority of residential development that has occurred in San Francisco has occurred in District 6, in Supervisor Kim's district. And I am profoundly aware that Supervisor Kim has used her office and worked with various departments, including but not limited to planning and the Mayor's Office of Housing, to push the envelope to make sure that the community is getting the most public benefit in the form of affordable housing that is possible. And indeed, it has, I think, been an example time and again when we were back in the dark days of 12% on-site inclusionary, where Supervisor Kim showed us that in projects, whether they required development agreements or not, we could actually provide housing for workers, housing for teachers, and so I want to salute that. As to process, and I'm not patting myself on the back when I say this, there has been something lacking, and to that end, that was one of the reasons that the board, albeit it did not pass, forwarded the concept to the voters of having a housing and development commission. where all of these deals, whether they're public deals or private deals, could actually get that level of scrutiny so that Supervisor Kim wouldn't be doing it all on her own as she was pushing the envelope to get us more affordable housing. So I do concur that going forward, and I hope that this is meant in the spirit that it is given, that we will actually come together so that we make sure we're not leaving any money on the table. And the questions that I asked last week and some of my colleagues asked were really about whether or not there was money being left on the table. I concur that developers get into this business to make a profit, and there's a lot of risk. So it doesn't hurt my feelings when I see a reasonable return on investment. That is what developers do, but it does hurt my feelings when we could be getting more affordable housing or closing a gap so that a project, whether it's at 180 Jones or 1066 Market or wherever it is, has the maximum feasible amount of affordable housing. That we don't have a crisis in luxury units in San Francisco. We have a crisis in low-income and middle-income units, and I think that is what Supervisor Kim has been trying to solve for. So I hope that going forward, the board can actually have a conversation so that we don't have what we saw here last week, and I mean no offense to the Mayor's Office of Housing or Planning, but it was highly siloized. Clearly, there hadn't been the level of communication. The numbers hadn't been verified. A lot of that, thankfully, has been done in the intervening week, and that has made me more comfortable, although I think as this hearing goes on, we've got questions about presumed interest rates and crystal ball calculations that when we get down into the weeds on this thing, we can ask. But I think going forward, the lesson for us is that we should have a higher level of procedural oversight as these one-off deals are created in the public interest.
Supervisor Tang.
Thank you, and I'll just definitely echo what Supervisor Peskin and Farrell just said, and of course want to thank Supervisor Kim and her office for, as Supervisor Peskin mentioned, just always looking out for the district and making sure that we can get the best possible deal. And we all know that she is a tough negotiator, so but I think that what this committee was really pointing at the last week was really not about this project, 180 Jones or 950 Market. It was actually about a larger idea about transparency and making sure that there is information that is independently vetted, whether by department or outside parties. So really that's the point that I think we were all trying to get at, but I think conceptually I could speak for this committee that we all know that this agreement that was hashed out is the best for this neighborhood. So I'll leave it at that so that we can move on with the hearing. Thank you.
Okay, so with that, we do have a number of speaker cards, but we're going to first call up, I'd like to ask Kate Hartley to come up, who's drafted a letter to us with some updated numbers, and just to walk through that, so we're all very clear on what the updated numbers do say.
Good afternoon, Supervisors. Kate Hartley, Mayor's Office of Housing. I'd just like to begin by saying that we agree we do have a process in place in this city to analyze transactions where there's some concessions or variations from the legislation for real estate, and that's a development agreement. And the Mayor's Office of Housing participates in development agreements regularly. They do get scrutinized by the Budget and Legislative Analyst Office, and we're more than happy to do that sort of work. And we do think that it's a great way to make sure that each transaction that moves forward is maximizing affordable housing, offering a fair return to developers, but that we're very clear on what the numbers are. So,
and Ms. Hartley, just before you go on, I just want to say that in the course of our discussions and my discussions with other department heads over the past week, since going through this rigmarole last Monday, I think everyone's in agreement. I want to thank everyone. Everyone's in agreement that we need a better process. And so I look forward to getting that legislation through so that this land use committee, again, is dealing with facts when we have everything in front of us and no one's looking at each other and pointing fingers. And I think that is where we all want to be.
Sounds good to me.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I have copies of the letter that I sent to you via email this morning. I'm happy to provide the hard copies. You have them? Okay. So essentially, Supervisor Farrell, you asked us to do further investigation into the research that we did in December regarding 180 Jones and 950 Market. At that time, we used the information that we had to assess the terms of this transaction and whether it made sense. There were a lot of moving parts, and we did the best we could with the information that we had. As you've described, in December, we found that the difference between the developer's surplus, and that is, I use that in a sort of non-standard way because we don't have information on the entirety of this transaction, which includes a hotel. But it looked like the developer had a benefit of approximately $2.4 million if the developer provided funding to the offsite versus just building on-site inclusionary. The developer rebutted that assessment on December 15th and said a few really important things. One is that we were using a sales cost inflation factor of 3.9%, which was too aggressive given what the market did in 2016. Also, there were some policy questions about whether the developer should be exempt from the gray water system requirements, as well as whether a fee applied for TDR, transferable development rights, was appropriate. And also whether we should be looking at the developer getting a benefit by, instead of paying all of the Section 415 inclusionary fees up front at first construction documents, which is typical, which is required under Section 415, instead deferring a portion of those fees, approximately $11 million, until temporary certificate of occupancy.
Ms. Harley, excuse me, Supervisor Peskin had a few questions.
If you want to go through the numbers, I just have questions on taking a snapshot in time for 2016 as compared to using a half a decade worth of data. And while the market may have flattened, although it's kind of hard for any of us to believe given that we just got our 6-month report from the controller, and 2016 had the highest ever in the history of the city and county collection of real estate transfer tax, and we are way over on property tax. So intuitively, I don't know whether this type of unit flattened a little bit in 2016, but intuitively, if the 3.9% number goes back to 2010, which was at the point we were coming out of the trough of the recession when nobody could get financing and what have you, it seems a little dangerous to start using 1.2%. I'm happy to solve this in other ways conceptually, including but not limited to what's a reasonable return on investment. And I understand that the exercise here fundamentally is what is the difference between the 31 on-site units and the however many 60 to 70, 68 off-site units, and whether the developer is making more money doing it off-site is something we're thinking about. But then again, we're also getting twice as many units. So, there's a lot of ways to skin it, but I'm not sure taking the number of 1.2% is the way to get there.
Well, it's a hard thing to argue. I think that you could commission a full market study and come up with a number that's appropriate. The developer proposed 1.2%. Based upon, and then provided market data from Polaris, which showed that there was an actual decline in sales prices in 2016 for the building type that they are proposing to build. In addition, we looked at information from Paracon Real Estate Group, Trulia, other sort of market watchers who are consistently evaluating the data, and they all confirmed that there was, for this building type, especially 1 and 2 bedroom units, a plateauing and even a sales price decline. In addition, these reporters are showing that because of increased inventory, there is not so strong a market. Now, is 1.2 the right number? I cannot tell you. And that's something that, it's a prediction. And it's something that, deeper study could probably provide a better answer. But there's definitely contradictory data showing that, you had 10, 15, 17% price appreciation between 2010 year over year and 2015, and then you had this plateauing, and then you saw a drop in sales prices for this. Will that continue? It's hard to say.
I think, Ms. Harley, though, to further Supervisor Peskin's comments, though, what we're being asked to approve, though, is literally putting our finger on a number and saying specifically that this is what we agree is going to be the condo growth rate and the pricing increase for the next 2.5 years. And and we can talk about the merits of it and maybe have further discussion about it. I, for one, mixed about that. One, I can't believe it on one side, given what we've gone through in the city and as we continue to talk about affordability issues. However, given the amount of new units coming online, given supply demand, I'm actually excited if that's the truth. But, as we talk through, as I work with the developer through the financial model and share with my colleagues here on this committee, it's a very big difference what the developer is getting or not getting if we agree at 1.2% versus 2.4%. All of a sudden, the developer at 1.2%, I'm sure you're going to run through it here in a sec if we let you speak, they are actually losing a few $100,000 on this because of this ordinance. But if we actually think it's 2.4%, doubling sounds like a lot, but in the grand scheme of things, people thinking housing is only going to appreciate 2.4% in the city of San Francisco, projected out 2.5 years, I dare say before this hearing or last week, even this week, many people would have said that's actually true. Then all of a sudden, at 2.4%, they're getting a benefit of close to $500,000. And that was exactly my point of questioning last week. I don't want to be approving legislation that grants them hundreds of thousands of dollars, let alone last week we thought it was $2.5 million of additional benefits. Let's get creative, but let's make it cost neutral to the developer. So I think while it's difficult, the point is, though, today we're having to decide what that point in the sand is. And so that's why I think it's, this discussion is going to be an interesting one.
Well, I think there's ways to address that. We can commission a better market study than just, sort of cursory review of the materials. And I think it's important to look at the entirety of this transaction. So MoCD originally came forward in support of this because we were acknowledging the community's desire to have 68 units built at a lower affordability rate than 31 condos on site. Granted, we wanted to make sure that there was no additional benefit relayed to the developer in that would, be adverse to affordable housing. So a lot turns on this inflation rate, which we have to make a guess on. Even a full market study will be making a guess. In addition, since the time that we did our initial analysis in December, the developer provided another $1 million in gift funds beyond the $2 million that they had previously committed to. And there are the questions of the applicability of a TDR assessment, as well as whether we should be looking at the delay in the payment at TCO between first construction documents and TCO as something that needs to be applied against the developer's contribution. So when you put all those together with the projected sales prices, that's really the analysis that we need to consider. And as we said in our last letter to you, if you assume a 1.2 inflation rate, then it's about break even between on-site and off-site. But if you decide as policymakers that the benefit, that there really shouldn't be a benefit conferred or a benefit applied to the developer because they're not paying their fee right at first construction documents, as is typical in a Section 415 in lieu fee payment, then they're actually spending approximately $1.8 million more to do the off-site development. Now, if you say 1.2% inflation on the condo sales prices is too low and you want to go to 2.4, then that, you'd have a different outcome. And we're more than happy to continue this analysis and give a variety of scenarios that bring in all of those elements. But there are some policy questions that have to be determined as part of that.
Okay. Do you want to run through your analysis and just the comparison? Because I think it's helpful for everybody.
When we went back, we took the data that we saw in the marketplace, also what the developer claimed, that we were too aggressive in the sales price inflation, and we revised the market rate revenue that they're projecting. We also had failed to account for a financial carrying cost for the developer from TCO to the point where their sales were completed. We didn't have an absorption rate. We didn't know what their cost of funds was at that time. We now know what it is, and so they're actually going to have to spend about $800,000 in interest in order to borrow the money to make the Section 415 payment. We kept the gray water system credit and the TDR credit the same. But now that we know what their money costs, we also gave them an additional, we also applied an additional benefit to them for not having to pay their fee at first construction documents. They increased their gift to the city by $1 million since the first analysis. Mm-hmm. And as you add and subtract all those credits and debits, it came out to about a $260,000 loss to the developer if they provided money for inclusionary development at 180 Jones. Again, there are some policy questions here that should inform that analysis about the TDR, about the requirement to pay the fee at first construction versus TCO. And about gray water, and we tried to lay those out for you in the letter, and that is where we landed.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Hartley. Colleagues, if no other questions, we have planning. Supervisor Peskin.
I'm so sorry, I want to say one thing. And my colleague Anne-Marie Rogers is here, and she does have additional information regarding gray water and TDR.
And if I may, and maybe this is not for Ms. Hartley and instead for planning, but my understanding is that somewhere along the way, the jobs housing linkage fee was calculated originally at $1.4 million and subsequently at $400,000. What's the behind-the-scenes story on that?
Good afternoon, Supervisors. Anne-Marie Rogers. I have some of the behind-the-scenes story, but I think Supervisor Kim probably knows more than I do. The ordinance as it was introduced included a $1.8 million original job housing linkage fee, which is a good guess of what the fee might be, but it also shows as to how complicated it is to figure out the real value of a deal such as this, because that is the straight fee, and what the drafter of the ordinance did not require is that when we would assess the fee, we would also give a credit for any existing office use that may need to pay the fee. So in this case, the existing use on the site would credit the developer for a $0.9 million credit, and so they would only really be due $0.9 million in actual jobs housing linkage fee. So they got a credit for on-site use, and so you have to pay for the impact of the higher intensity use, but if you already have a high intensity use on the site, then you don't have to pay because you're not increasing the intensity. You only pay by the amount that you're increasing the intensity.
So the final jobs housing linkage number was what?
0.9 million. 4, sorry, bad math. 4. Thank you, math experts in the audience.
So it went from 1.8 to 400,000?
Because of on-site credits.
I like 900,000 better.
Sorry, yeah.
Supervisor Kim?
Just to talk a little bit about the amendments that we've now made to the ordinance. The original ordinance was for $18.8 million, and this was under the assumption that the jobs housing linkage fee was $1.4 million. However, through extensive conversations with the developer, knowing that there is a gap on the 180 Jones site, the developer and I were able to work out a deal where actually, despite the fact it was a $1.4 million reduction, she's still going to pay half. Well, we are waiving the jobs housing linkage fee, but instead of a $1.4 million reduction, we're only doing a $700,000 reduction. So she did want to make sure that there was a gift slightly above what the JHL required that is codified in the ordinance that is before us today. Just a couple of things, though. I know I just want to concur with the Land Use Committee. I would love for there to be a consistent assessment of all of our land use development deals. It has been an incredible amount of work for our staff in my office, who fields the vast majority of developments here in the city, to make sure that not only are we getting a fair deal for our city and making sure that we are building as much affordable housing as well as contributions to arts and open space and pedestrian safety and the whole multitude of things that we care about when we build healthy and complete neighborhoods with the vast amount of development. But we do have to run our own numbers, and we depend upon a lot of community members through Choo-Choo, through our affordable housing developers to help us run numbers to make sure that we are getting a fair deal. And so I do think that it makes sense for the city to help provide that. The Mayor's Office of Housing, by the way, has been incredibly helpful in each of our development negotiations, and I want to acknowledge Olson Lee and Kate Hardley and the staff are always working with our office to make sure that we are running the best numbers possible. But we do support that. But I do really want to emphasize that the 180 Jones 950 Market deal was really structured in a way that we felt was fair, given a deal that we just negotiated a little less than a year ago, a half a block away at 1066 Market. And so when we negotiated this deal, we did a cost comparison between those two developments to make sure that while we were getting the most that we could, we were also treating developers as fairly as possible and not asking one to do more than the other. And so very similarly, 1066 Market, building 304 market rate units, 950 Market at 242, they're both feeing out at roughly 25%. So at 101 Hyde, building 85 units of affordable housing, at 180 Jones at 60 units. But just so I know there were concerns about the gap, the estimated gap at 101 Hyde is $4 million. And for this deal, based on the estimates that we got from Mayor's Office of Housing, it's only $700,000. And so, because for a number of reasons, we were able to stretch the dollars more, and also the land costs far less in 180 Jones than it did for 101 Hyde. But if we do have concerns about the payment at First Construction Document, or TCO, in this case we didn't, because we knew it would take several years for us to even build 180 Jones. And so for us, the timeline wasn't as the timeliness of the payment was not as important to us. But if we're going to talk about the value of that, this committee and this board did not question us when in the 1066 Market deal, we actually let them make their affordable housing gift as an exempt contribution to a foundation. So they actually got tax-exempt charitable contribution by not gifting that affordable housing fund to the city, but by giving to San Francisco Foundation. And so there's a tremendous value to that as well. And this board did not question that monetary value that we gave to the Shorensteins in the 1066 Market. So obviously, there's a lot of different deals. They're apples and oranges. This is for ownership and hotel. 1066 Market was all rentals. But we do the best that we can to try to run consistent housing deals that come before this land use committee. But I agree, it would be great to have an independent analysis that comes from the city to help make sure that we are running the best deals possible.
Ms. Rogers, maybe we can invite you back up. I believe you were going to
Thank
go
you,
through some
Supervisor.
additional numbers.
There were two other numbers that planning staff was responsible. But first, I would also like to support the idea that you were forwarding of additional fiscal vetting. Zoning changes supported by a development agreement do have such a process, and our staff and our commission would support such fiscal analysis by true experts. Just as this body has concerns today, staff in the Planning Commission also had concerns when the ordinance was before them. But we did not have the tools to fully vet this from a fiscal perspective. So we appreciate the board's interest in doing so. The other two fees that I wanted to talk about besides the jobs housing linkage fees would be the graywater fee. And we use the development, the numbers that came to us from the developer. And in the intervening week, the PUC actually tested those numbers and concluded that those are appropriate.
However, planning staff does continue to differ from the project sponsor about whether they should be subject to that requirement at all. And as I said last week, it is our opinion that the project sponsor could not have possibly received their entitlements prior to the effective date of the requirement, so thereby waiving this requirement is a policy decision before this board. And then secondly, on the TDR costs, last week we estimated them at $25 per square foot based upon a comparison of recent sales. And actually, with further research, we found that that is a set rate of $25 per square foot that is required by board resolution for specific purchase for the site.
Thank you, Ms. Rogers.
Thank you.
And again, I want to, in terms of all the analysis that we looked through over the past week, look, I concur with, and I want to thank PUC as well for weighing in on the Greywater analysis, planning for talking about TDRs, and I agree with the carrying cost questions that were talked about. I think to me the biggest question is whether we're going to agree as a board, and I'm supported. I actually have an amendment to make sure that that we do a 1.2% growth rate over the next 2.5 years. I think that's subject to debate and so forth, and I think we can have that discussion. Colleagues, if no other questions right now for staff, I think we do have a lot of public speaking cards here, and so I'd like to start going through them. If open for everybody else. All right, so with that, we'll open public comment. I got speaker cards here. I'll read your name off. Please feel free, please line up here on the far side once your name's been called, and everyone will have 2 minutes. I have Rob Poole, Eric Margot, Helen Bean, Curtis Bradford, Jesse Johnson, Cynthia Gomez, Josephine Rivera, and Stephanie Ashley. And I got some more here as well.
Good afternoon, supervisors. My name is Rob Poole. I'm the Development and Communications Manager at the Housing Action Coalition. Hope you all had a great weekend. 950 Market has been through quite the journey. So we always see these projects at our Project Review Committee, and this one first came to us in July of 2014. So just over 2.5 years ago. And my goodness, a lot has happened in 2.5 years. At that time, it was an SUD. It was clear that the project sponsor's intention was to maximize the community benefits the project could deliver. In this case, it was for the arts community. The SUD did not work out. They went to an as-of-right project, and a year later, we saw it again. And now here we are in early 2017 with what we feel is a terrific proposal that, in the long run, will maximize the amount of permanently affordable housing that it can deliver. We think that this solution introduced by Supervisor Kim is very sensible. A lot of decisions on this project were made many, many years ago, and it's hard to predict where things go, but this is a smart proposal, and we urge, it was a great proposal 2.5 years ago, it's good today, and we hope we can move it forward. Thanks for your time.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Hello, I'm Helen Bean, representing the Tenderloin Equitable Development Project, and we're here to support the 180 Jones Street ordinance because of the benefits it provides to the Tenderloin residents and community. Basically, we believe that this ordinance is preferable to building on-site affordable units because it more than doubles the number of affordable housing that would be built, and it provides those units at a deeper level of affordability. And it also includes these step-up units that would be available to SRO tenants in city-funded supportive housing that will free up their units for other homeless people needing a home. And so for these reasons, we believe that the 180 Jones Street ordinance best serves Tenderloin residents, and we request that the committee vote to move this item to the full board. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Hello, my name is Josephine Rivera, and I live across the 550 Market project since 1990. I have worked as a hotel housekeeper at the Marriott on 4th Street for 16 years. I am a union representative with Local 2 Unite here. I'm representing Holiday Inn Civic Center, Park 55, Park Central, Whitcomb, Pickwick, Drake, and also Chancellor. I have had housekeeping jobs with the union and also without a union contract. I can tell you how much better it is for the hotel employees to have a union. The wages are better. We have job security and protection, and we get health care and pension when we retired. The developers of 950 Market have signed an agreement that will allow workers at the hotel to organize a union without fear of retaliation. This will provide good living wages, jobs that will benefit this neighborhood. And also today, I am asking you to approve this motion for 180 Jones, which is an important part of this project. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Good afternoon. Cynthia Gomez, research analyst at Unite Here Local 2, the Hotel Workers Union. As you've just heard, the project sponsors have signed an agreement that will protect hotel workers' right to form a union without fear of retaliation, which is increasingly important. They signed this agreement more than a year ago in December of 2015. And so the hotel jobs will almost certainly be the kind we need more of in San Francisco in terms of the living wages, the family health care, the retirement benefits, the job protection. We also have members who live in the Tenderloin and who depend on SRO housing and affordable housing. So any project that will expand affordable housing options is certainly one that we would support. In this case, as I said, the project has many community benefits. It has workforce training as a pathway to good hotel jobs. And today's 180 Jones is something that the ordinance is something we definitely are urging you to support. Please do not allow for these important community benefits, this housing, and the prospect of much-needed living wage jobs to be further delayed. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Good afternoon, supervisors. My name is Curtis Bradford. I am the president of the East Tenderloin Community Residents Association. I'm a member of Market Street for the Masses Coalition, the 950 Market Street Coalition that actually negotiated the benefits agreement as part of that thing. And also here as one of the members of the Tenderloin People's Congress. And I would like to say that the reason why I'm here today is to really speak in strong support of the 180 Jones deal. See, we worked on this deal for a year and a half. It was actually negotiated by community members living in the Tenderloin, actual residents like myself, who sat down at the table with the developer for a year and a half in robust negotiations to reach this agreement. And it's a really unprecedented opportunity for you to support a resident and driven process that created this. This is what the Tenderloin wanted. The Tenderloin residents asked for this development. The Tenderloin residents negotiated this development. And it's just a part of a whole package of benefits that were negotiated for the Tenderloin, including a rent-free space, a community space at the corner of Turk and Taylor, permanently rent-free, including $400,000 for a workforce development program in the Tenderloin. So 180 Jones is a part of a larger package that was negotiated aggressively by the Tenderloin residents. I was one of those people. And I would like to say that I really would expect that our Board of Supervisors would support this resident-driven initiative. Frankly, we're talking about a few dollars here, and you're looking at, well, the dollars even out. Is it 100,000 more, 200,000 more this way or that way? How do you measure the real benefit of actually building 60 units of affordable housing in the Tenderloin in a site that would otherwise probably never be developed? We want this housing. We need this housing. We want your support. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Hello. My name is Jesse Johnson. I'd like to reiterate some of what Curtis said today. The 180 Jones project is important. It's crucial to the future of working class and low-income people in the Tenderloin, but equally important is the process by which this decision was made. This entailed not only months of negotiation between the coalition and Group I, but hours upon hours upon hours of conversation within the community. We covered a whole range of issues, from strategies for our survival, perhaps a collective vision of what our future might look like, accountability, representation, transparency. All these issues were an important part of that discussion. I know in the past that too often, decisions of this magnitude have been made by established political players or so-called community gatekeepers. This time it was different. This time it entailed the democratic participation of a great number of empowered residents, and please support that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next speaker, please.
Hi, Supervisors. My name is Eric Marcoux. I'm a community organizer in the Tenderloin and a member of the Tenderloin People's Congress. Please support the 180 Jones Affordable Housing Project. The residents negotiated with Group I to formulate a state-of-the-art agreement which should be a standard for developers in the future. This process took over a year to create an agreement that truly speaks to the needs and wants of the Tenderloin community. The Land Use Committee and the Board of Supervisors should honor the desires of the residents and approve this project as originally negotiated. The opposition to this project is a cynical attempt by Supervisor Farrell to politicize the project while appearing to be an advocate of affordable low-income housing, which has never been the case. Don't play politics with our housing and our benefits. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Chair, may I remind the members of the audience there are no audible expressions of support or opposition. If you would like to show your support, you can use your spirit fingers. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Next speaker, and by the way, as our next speaker comes up, let me call up the next few cards that I have. Arya Saeed, Randy Shaw, Ramon Quintero, Reggie Meadows, Rio Schaff, Darnell Boyd, and Jamie Meyer.
Thank you, and good afternoon, supervisors. My name is Stephanie Ashley. I'm the executive director of the St. James Infirmary, and I'm here today as a member of the Compton's District Coalition, which, as some of you may know, is a coalition of organizations serving and made up of the trans community in the Tenderloin. And the Compton's Coalition came together as just one section of a broad community effort to reach some agreements around the 950 Market Street project. And I'm here today to represent that section of the community and just say that we really encourage you to move forward with the 180 Jones project and with the agreement as it currently stands. Supervisor Kim's office did a phenomenal job of bringing the community together to come up with a set of agreements that really does benefit as much of and the most needing sections of the Tenderloin community, and we're really hopeful that 180 Jones can move forward as quickly as possible. St. James Infirmary, as well as the Taja's Coalition and the TGI Justice Project, are located just a block and a half away from 950 Market, and so we're very invested in seeing the best possible outcome from this project, and we believe that the 180 Jones proposal in its current form is that best version. So we hope that you'll move the project forward with as little delay as possible. Thank you.
Thanks. Next speaker, please.
Good afternoon. I did not fill in a card. My name is Nori Mizushima. I'm with Lend-Lease. I'm a vice president of the general contractor that'd be on the project for 950 Market. We see that as a very positive plus to the project itself. Can you hear me? And there's a very positive plus to the project itself. A very plus to the community itself. We would be providing probably about 2,000 jobs in construction itself, probably about over a 20-month period for the construction. Our company is very well known for being very safe. We're safety conscious. We will do everything we can to protect the public and the workers themselves and to maintain the necessary conditions that we feel best benefit both the people who live there and the people who will work at the site. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Yes, Supervisors, Randy Shaw, Director of the Tenderloin Housing Clinic. You know, you've seen incredible unanimity here in the Tenderloin, and every labor, community, developers, all on the same page, and that's why this project really needs to move forward and get out of committee today. I do appreciate the comments before about understanding why this is a good deal, which wasn't clear last week to some of you. But I also want to caution you folks to, when you get into this numbers game, to realize something very important here. The money spent on on-site condos was of no benefit to the Tenderloin residents. Okay, no benefit at all. So the fact that you get a certain benefit from doing on-site condos, that costs one thing, and you're comparing it to 40% median for affordable housing that do benefit Tenderloin residents, that's humongous. Taking that condo money is almost like flushing it down the toilet for the Tenderloin because no residents would benefit. So it's not simply a money game. And the other thing is, as I mentioned in an article I wrote, TNDC had to get $18 million that Supervisor Kim arranged from Forest City to even put Eddie and Taylor in play. If we're going to have a new rule which says nonprofits have to have all their financing before they can get approved for a project, there'll be no more nonprofit housing. Because as you all know, both private sector development and nonprofit, the second their projects get approved, they're already under budget because of the construction costs that keep going up. So we have to be very careful about how we talk about money. And we need to talk not about the dollar amount, but the value. And in this case, 180 Jones is the best value for the city and the Tenderloin. Thank you.
Next speaker, please.
Supervisors, my name is Ramon Quintero. I represent TNDC, and TNDC has been part of this coalition with the community to create this deal for the community between Group I and in support of 180 Jones. I guess I just want to bring to attention the importance of having a participatory process and respecting that process once it's allowed by the city. And we want to encourage communities to participate in their communities. And so in effort to do that and to support that, we need to move forward with 180 Jones. And because the community has put the work, has shown up to the meetings, has worked together, and I think this is a very good opportunity for the board to support a community that has shown up, worked hard, made a deal, and that shows that is something that it's needed in our society. More people participating, more people taking an interest in the community, and I think participatory planning is an important thing, and we need to respect that. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Next speaker, please.
Good afternoon. My name is Arya Saeed, and I'm representing the Compton's Coalition for the Compton's Cultural District for Transgender People. And as a team, we are very excited to see the formation of 180 Jones and seeing a community-led and implemented negotiation is innovative and tailor-made specific to this region of the Tenderloin. And we are in full support.
Thank you very much. Next speaker, please.
Good afternoon. Jamie Mayer, Managing Director of the Magic Theater, the recipient of the nonprofit space for the 950-974 market development. The ordinance-enabled project, in fact, costs more than the on-site BMR option. Additionally, the developer is providing more than $5 million worth of community benefit package to ensure existing neighborhood residents participate in the benefits of the project. It is absolutely essential that the committee pass this ordinance to bring much-needed affordable housing to the neighborhood. The community has made it very clear that this is the affordable development solution it wants and needs, and we believe the developer is paying more than their fair share. Any delay causes harm to those most in need of housing in the Tenderloin. Without passage of this ordinance, Group I's only option is to build its required affordable units on site, which would provide fewer units at a less affordable purchase price. This is not a tenable solution for this community. The neighborhood has waited long enough for jobs, housing, and programming planned for this critical site. We encourage you to support this ordinance today so that the project can move forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Good afternoon. My name is Darnell Boyd, and I'm here to support the 180 Jones ordinance because it's a step-up program. And for me, who just got housed, it adds back to the natural flow of things, from homelessness to the shelter to SRO and then to an affordable apartment. So I would like to endorse it, and I would like to ask Supervisor O'Farrell a question. He said in the beginning that we are holding housing hostage in San Francisco, and we, which includes you, right? And I want to know, and the word hostage means you holding something for something. So I want to know, what will it take to get housing back flowing? Because housing is held up hostage. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please. Sorry, if you don't mind, sir, before you go, let me call the next speaker card so they can come up. Alan Stewart, Adam Livonian, Sonia Fernandez, Stephen Tennis, Gail Seagraves, David Elliott Lewis, Otto Duffy, Felicia Smith.
Well, what a coincidence. My name is Stephen Tennis. I've been a 30-year resident of the Tenderloin. I work for and volunteer with Central City ESCO Collaborative, and I am or was a member of the 950 Market Street Coalition. For a year and a half, we worked hard. We worked long hours. We went to over 100 meetings in that year and a half, and we have a deal with Group I. Now, I don't know what your motivations are, Mr. Farrell, but I think you really blew it on this one. We have an agreement with Group I, It's not just about money. It's about step-up housing. It's about getting people off of the street into housing. People like me that is in SROs to get something other than just an SRO, all right? To delay this is just unconscionable. You're doing nothing but harm by having these delays. There's no reason for delays. There's an old saying, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. This ain't broke. It works. Everybody wants it. Why you don't, I have no idea. But please, I am for 180. Please pass it. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Hello, council people. I'm Reginald Meadows. I'm from the Tenderloin People Congress. I want to first of all thank Jane Kim for all her efforts that she has been putting forward to help the community, along with Mr. Piskin and others, to make it possible for us to have affordable housing down there, real ones, that is, not the condos. It is important to note that what we are discussing is something already agreed upon by the TDL representatives and the developers. The agreement should stand as it is. As for the monies and programs already agreed upon, there should be no need for further discussion, as those joined in the determination has agreed. If money was what they really needed more of, they would have discussed it at the table, not with your help, Mr. Farrell. So far, Mr. Farrell, we need not that you jump in at this time and make any changes, period. Let's turn this situation around. If we were sitting in your chair where you're sitting at wearing your nice suits, and you came in needing housing and other things that happen in your community, how would you like it if we stand before you to get help, be turned down by you because you don't concern yourself with the help or the need of the people, but only with the money you can get in your pockets? So we have to change all this now. You're supposed to be a team of people for us because we voted you in. So why don't you act like it and do your job correctly? Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Good afternoon, committee members. My name is Rio Sharf. I work with the Central City SRO Collaborative. I was part of the 950 Market Coalition negotiating the community benefits agreement for 950 Market. It's great that we're working on this week. Wednesday marks the 100th anniversary of the attempt by city politicians and church leaders to shut down the Tenderloin, shut down over 200 businesses, put over 1,000 people out of work. And they really thought they'd put a lid on the neighborhood for good. But as you all know, the Tenderloin's still kicking 100 years later. And it's because coalitions like the one you see before you, members of the TLGB community, members of low-income housing, nonprofit folks, business folks, come together in the Tenderloin to keep our community thriving and to work out arrangements between those sectors that'll keep our neighborhood strong. What more could the Land Use Committee want? In this case, we're coming to you with a deal worked out with our supervisor, with the developer, with multiple community groups, a deal that's going to have tremendous benefits for many sectors of our community. We believe fully, because we have vetted this project for months, that it will have an overall benefit. And here, what we hear is nitpicking over what percentage growth we'll see over the next few years so that we can guess what level of profit the developers will make. Well, we're not interested in slowing this project down or stopping the development of housing because the developers could potentially make profit or lose profit in 5 years. We have looked over the numbers with planning, with MOHCD, we've reviewed them with the developer, and community groups throughout the Tenderloin have reviewed the potential benefits here. All of us are confident that this project should move forward and will be good for our community, and we ask for you all to trust our community's understanding of what's best for our neighborhood. Every question you're now asking, we have answered for ourselves. You are not even considering many aspects of the community benefits agreement that we've developed. Hundreds of hours that the developers have spent meeting with community groups have not been valued when you're thinking about the overall benefits here. The de-escalation training that they've offered for all hotel workers to be trained in so that they know how to deal with community residents, that hasn't been evaluated. The $300,000 of job training funds, that has not been evaluated. There are a tremendous number of benefits that haven't even been considered in the amount of profits these developers stand to make. So please understand that we've led this through a 2-year community process. We trust our numbers. We trust the benefits of this process. We ask you all to move this out of committee with the recommendation to be voted and approved by the Board of Supervisors. Thank you. Let our residents step up and to step up housing.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Greetings, supervisors, Mark, Aaron, Jane, Katie. David Elliott Lewis, Central City SRO Collaborative. I've been part of the negotiation process with the developer for 2 years, part of 950 Market Street. I implore you to look at the big picture. Here's the big picture. This project is entitled, it's going forward, it's being built. Ground will be broken soon. So the question is, do we build on-site 31 units of condos for people that most people in the Tenderloin can never afford? Or do we build over twice as many units off-site at 180 Jones, half at 40% AMI? This will be step-up housing for people who are living in SRO rooms. And I don't know if you've ever spent a night in an SRO room. I have. It's a small room with a bathroom down the hall, and you don't get a kitchen. This is a chance for a life-changing event for people who live in the Tenderloin to step up their lives. Again, 950 Market is going forward. It can go forward with 180 Jones off-site housing or not. And for you to argue, about potential rates of growth and profit, potential rates of growth in real estate prices, which nobody has a crystal ball. Let's face it, we didn't know in early November 7th, what would happen in November 8th, that we'd have a maniac for president. We didn't know that. How could you know what is going to be for the potential interest or growth rates next year or 5 years? And if you look at the construction gap of what it's going to cost to build 180 Jones versus not, it's much smaller than other gaps in the community. The community supports this. I implore you, supervisors, to not obstruct off-site housing. Again, 950 Market is being built. Let's build 180 Jones. Let's help poor people in the community. Don't block us. Support us.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Hi, my name's Alan Stewart, and I'm on the board for the Magic Theater. And I just had 3 quick points. One is, as a former business owner in the city, I understand the need to look at numbers and the importance of numbers when you're building something, but I also really heed the terrific community support that's out there for a project like this. And just listening to what's going on here, it absolutely seems like a no-brainer to move forward. So I'd certainly urge in that regard. In regards to the Magic Theater, which hopes to occupy a space there, the Magic represents what the city represents, and our repertoire speaks to the community. It speaks to the Tenderloin community in particular, and it's a great opportunity to bring that voice to the space. And then finally, the third point, which has been said but is valuable and worth repeating, is that the neighborhood has waited long enough for the jobs, housing, and programming planned for this critical site. And we encourage you to support this ordinance today so that the project moves forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Hi. I'm Sonia Fernandez. I also work for Magic Theater, which will occupy the community space at 950 Market. I'm going to be honest, I was really surprised by the delay. Maybe I don't know much about city government, but this, like Alan says, this housing project seems to be a no-brainer. It's my understanding as a longtime resident of San Francisco and voter of San Francisco that the lack of affordable housing is the #1 biggest problem in this city. Through the 180 Jones project, Group I is adding 68 below market rate rental units to the neighborhood's housing supply. This is affordable housing that the community needs and, as you've heard, has asked for. Delaying this much needed housing only hurts those in need of housing in the Tenderloin. On a personal note, as a former renter and resident of the Tenderloin and a person who is trying very hard to stay in the city and raise a family in the city, please take action and keep us as San Francisco.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Good afternoon. My name is Adam Livonian. I'm a literary apprentice at Magic Theater, and I'm reading a statement on behalf of Matt Sorgan-Fry, a Magic Theater trustee. I'm writing to offer my voice in support of the 180 Jones Affordable Housing Ordinance. As a property owner in the Bay Area, a volunteer for housing and arts organizations in the Bay Area, and a 35-year resident of the Bay Area, I try to support these proposals and offers that we can bring a swift and impactful solution. Housing is a complex issue, and the full resolution of this issue will be an iterative process instead of a master plan. My personal frustration is that many organizations try to search for complete solutions to very difficult issues. From my perspective, there is a very real offer from Group I that will provide a meaningful solution that can be delivered quickly. It is a step in the right direction, supported by the community, and I urge you to approve the 180 Jones Affordable Housing Ordinance. The key points that I see that offer a swift solution are: the 180 Jones Affordable Housing Ordinance would add 60 to 70 below market rate rental units affordable to the Tenderloin residents to the neighborhood's housing supply, more than double the number of units that would be created on site. The off-site housing was conceived and driven by the community from the start as the best way to serve the Tenderloin's residents. To make 180 Jones a reality, Group I has purchased and is dedicating the land at 180 Jones Street and providing an $11.4 million fee payment and $2.7 million gift for the construction of this affordable development. These numbers are based on an equivalency study conducted by Seafull Consulting, hired by TNDC, to confirm that there is no additional profits to Group I in comparison to building on-site BMR. The ordinance-enabled project, in fact, costs more than the on-site BMR option, and the developer is providing more than $5 million worth of community benefit package to ensure existing neighborhood residents participate in the benefits of the project. Please approve the 180 Jones Affordable Housing Ordinance. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next speaker, please.
Good afternoon, supervisors. My name is Gail Seagraves, and I work at Central City SRO Collaborative as a tenant organizer at the Elk Hotel here in the Tenderloin. I'm here in support of 180 Jones. On a personal note, I have been in an SRO for 8 years, not because I want to, but that's all I can afford. This gives me and other residents, long-term residents, an opportunity to have hope to actually move into a place with a kitchen and a bathroom. That happens to be very important. And I just urge you to please trust us, the community. This is a good project. We worked hard. Trust the community and pass this, please. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please. Ma'am, just before you speak, I have 3 last cards, so I'll just call them up. Julian Dash, Wendy Yu, and Moises Vileda.
Hi, my name is Felicia Smith. I am a tenant organizer at the Union Hotel, resident of the TL. I am a perfect example of why we need this 180. A couple years ago, I went through a very bad divorce after 25 years of marriage, and it was unexpected. I was told I had 2 weeks to get out of the house that I had lived in for 27 years. I didn't know the laws. I left. I slept on a park bench for 2 months, and then I slept in a broken-down pickup truck. A police officer that would come and check on me when I was sleeping in the park told me about 311, which got me into an SRO. I was very grateful, but I have 2 kids. Too many rules and regulations. I can't have my kids with me at the SRO. A step-up program would be perfect. I could have somewhat of a normal life again. I was so depressed and despondent until I heard about 180 Jones and other projects like this, and it gave me a sense of hope. It gave me hope that maybe I'll be okay one day. So please don't delay this anymore. We need it. I need my kids.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
My name is Otto Duffy. I often like to speak it last because I like to hear what the other people say and the discussion here, and I very much appreciate it. I often find my own thoughts about things, being improved or changing by that. I would say that I agree that the focus of this on a slightly lower income group of people, a working class group, not really the lowest income by far, but a lower group, is definitely going to work out much better for the Tenderloin. And so, I don't know if there's more money on the table or not, but it may be, unless you very carefully put that money in a very good direction, I don't know that it's going to even if we get more money, if it's going to improve the project any.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Hello, my name is Julian Dash, owner of Holy Stitch at 42 Turk and Mason, and also holding seat number 2 on the CAC for the CVA Mid-Market District. I'm in full support of the ordinance. I think it goes without saying, and everyone already saying, we need housing. The community already asked for this, desires this. Knowing everything is based on a relationship and people-to-people basis when it boils down to things, my sentiment and perspective, knowing Joy O and a lot of business owners, building owners, things in the community, me, myself, I sell clothing and art, and I have relationships with many of them. I'm in full support of Joy and anything she would do on the basis of the principle of her ethos and understanding of the arts and community, not just as a buy-in or something that's facetious, just on another level. Also, on a personal sentiment, I recently have lost my housing and have been living in the Tenderloin for the past couple, maybe half a year. And so from an empathetic point, having a family and my business where I rely on my art, I can see full circle as far as, because I only saw this project, it would be nice for my business to have a rent-free place, to be able to work on my workforce development for my youth in my factory. But now understanding even deeper from an empathetic point of the disparity of housing, being in the community of the Tenderloin, being a business owner, relying on my own hands for my own survival and my family, I see the necessity of this project to get done as soon as possible. My business is across the street from the 950 project, and I see the ins and outs and the day-to-day things of it, and again, I'm just in full support of it in any way.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Hello, my name is Wendy Yu. I'm speaking today here as a member of the public. I would like this project to go forward without any further delay. Very few affordable housing units are built under 55% of area median income, which translate to approximately $41,000 a year. Okay. People on fixed income generally top out at $18,000 a year. That is not even enough. There's no housing being built on that lower end. Any delay is going to add cost, both time and financial. I don't understand why there is such a high level of scrutiny on this project. If you want something to scrutinize, okay, Balboa Reservoir, for instance, okay, the numbers are 18% for those making less than $41,000 a year. That's 55% of area median income. 15% of those units for people making $90,000 a year, or 120% of area median income. And then $113,000, or 150% of area median income. 17% of the housing is there. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Next speaker, please.
Good afternoon. My name is Judy Young, and I'm the director of the Vietnamese Youth Development Center. We're located on Eddy and Mason in the heart of the Tenderloin. I'm here to support Group I. Group I has been working with VYDC for the past 3 years, and they truly have understood the needs of the Asian community in the Tenderloin. There's over 30,000 families and young people and single residents that live in the neighborhood. And we want to make sure that there are jobs and housing for our community as well. So our center works with primarily immigrant youth and families. We urge you to pass this ordinance today so that our youth, young adults, and family will benefit from this package. Our clients will receive jobs through the 950 hotel site, and our families and those most in need of housing will benefit from the 180 Jones site. Now more than ever, our immigrant community needs housing and jobs. It's imperative that you move forward this ordinance as soon as possible. I'm fully here to support the movement of the ordinance. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please. As we're getting at the end of this line, if there's anybody else here that wishes to speak in public comment, please line up on the far side, and everyone will be there together.
Good afternoon, supervisors. My name is Moises Villeda. I am a field representative with the Carpenters Union, Local 22, and we are here today to support the project sponsor, Group I, in their project at 950 Market Street, 180 Jones. This is a great project. Not only will it bring 60 to 70 units of 100% affordable housing that is much needed to the residents of the Tenderloin, it would also create jobs, avenues of opportunity for our apprentices and our journeymen alike. So for these reasons, we urge you to move this project forward and let us build it right. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next speaker, please.
Good afternoon. My name is Brenda Washington. I reside in the SRO Hotel. I've been there over 8 years, but lived in the Tenderloin over 20. I've seen the good things, I've seen the bad things, I've seen the up things, and I've seen the down things. But what would let me down is not passing the 180 Jones Street initiative for step-up housing. I'm a 2-time cancer survivor. Every day my health goes a step worse than it was the day before, and I don't want to have to wear a diaper because I can't make it to the bathroom not having my own bathroom. I don't want to keep getting infections because of different people's handling of food. I want to fix my own food. I have nowhere to do that. So I'm asking you, and I'm praying that this project passes, and I'm one of the residents that gets to live in there, or even just seeing it before I leave this world will be a lot to me. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next speaker, please.
Thank you, Supervisor Steve Vettel on behalf of Group I, the project sponsor. You've heard discussion today about the rest of the community benefits package that Group I negotiated with the community, and I just wanted to go through what those are for you. This is in addition to any city-required fees, such as the transit fee and other fees, the child care fees, as well as in addition to the affordable housing discussion we were having today. This package is worth about $5 million of additional voluntary contributions from Group I. It includes free art space, 2,000 square feet rent-free space. The Magic Theater will operate a Magic Lab with training and performance for the community. It includes $350,000 in de-escalation training, public space, and safety training for employees and hotel guests. It includes $350,000 in construction mitigation impacts for low-income residents living immediately adjacent to the site. It includes $300,000 in workforce development housing. It includes $75,000 for an LGBT interpretive program. And it includes a card check neutrality agreement with Local 2. Not including that card check neutrality agreement is not monetized in this discussion. So altogether, we're talking about $5 million. In addition to the $3 million gift the Group I is providing under the 180 Jones Ordinance. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Next speaker, please.
Hi, Dan Jordan. I'm with the Central City SRO Collaborative. I'm here in support of the 180 Jones project. This project needs to be built. People that are on low income, such as Social Security, SSI, SSDI, will be able to afford that, whereas with the 950 market, even the upper middle class people won't be able to afford that. Not going at $2,000 or more a month. People on Social Security, we get maybe $1,000 a month, give or take. And for a person who has only allowed 2 units of low-income housing to be built in his district, Supervisor Farrell. I think that's pretty pathetic. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please. Any other members of the public wish to comment on items 3 or 4? Okay, seeing none, public comment is closed. Supervisor Kim.
Thank you. I do believe the Land Use Committee has copies of the amendments that I articulated earlier before public comment, and so it would be great if we could have a motion to amend the ordinance to include those amendments. Second, I do want to just acknowledge the comments that Steve Vettel made. I did have them in my talking points originally, but I forgot to make them. Outside of the ordinance that is before us today, the community also signed a community benefits agreement, which makes the package larger than what is before the Land Use Committee today. There is a dedication to Magic Theater currently in the Presidio. They need to find a new arts venue space. They worked very closely with the developer early on, I think the beginning of last year, to negotiate a ground floor art space there, which will be a theater, which will add another theater to the mid-market corridor along kind of the historic nature of what Market Street had previously been, with agreements that Magic Theater would work closely in partnership with many of our youth and arts organizations in the Tenderloin to provide additional arts performance space. Of course, there is several mitigations around the construction for many of the residents that live nearby, but also the $300,000 contribution for a workforce development fund that will help train Tenderloin residents to actually be able to be employed at the hotel when they finally open. But finally, something that could not be part of our negotiation, but I want to thank the developer for agreeing to do a card check with Local 2 to ensure that our workers have an opportunity to unionize if they would like so. So again, this is what is before the Land Use Committee today. And so committee, I just ask for your support. And again, I just want to recognize and thank all the members of the community for coming out today. It has been a very, very long process. And just going back to the gray water exemption, normally that's not something I would support, but really we have been talking to 950 Market developer since 2013 on this project, and there has been so many changes. And actually, we as a city had originally wanted this to be an arts SUD, and the developer really spent a lot of time working with the community on an arts project that included hotel and residential. And then there are numerous design changes that happened over the summer. Honestly, we were not expecting that this project wouldn't have site permits before November of 2016, which is when the gray water ordinance took into effect. And we felt it was fair because they had been in the pipeline for over 3 years to give them this exemption because of the length of time it took for them to get through the process. So again, thank you to all the members of the public for coming out. You reminded me how long this process was for us as well, but we appreciate your patience and work. But the last thing I will just say is this. We've never had a project commit to step up affordable housing for single-room occupancy tenants. And this is really a historic accomplishment. This is something we sorely, sorely need. And not only does it provide an opportunity for many of our residents to step up in their affordable housing unit, it will free up single-room occupancy rooms in the future for those that are often on our streets today. And so this is incredibly important. We need to expand this portfolio. I know we've had numerous hearings about it, but we actually have to make it happen. So I want to thank the developer for working with the community to make that real. Thank you.
Thank you. So, colleagues, we have more comments, but we do have a set of amendments offered by Supervisor Kim. I understand working with our Mayor's Office of Housing and Community Development. Could I have a motion to accept those amendments?
And those are the amendments to item number 4.
Correct.
Yes, I'm happy to move those amendments.
Second.
My Supervisor Peskin, second my Supervisor Tang. We take those without objection. And colleagues, I will say, and to Supervisor Kim and my committee, I want to thank everybody for the time over the past week to be able to review the analysis. Thank our city departments for coming together, as well as the developer. What is different about this project is that we have a baseline project, but we have a ordinance in front of us that is creating certain exemptions and bestowing certain benefits. So to the community members that came out, in particular Labor and Local 22, thank you for coming out and the manner in which you do so. And in speaking with your field representative last week, thank you for doing that. Obviously, that means a lot to this committee and to myself. But when we have a project like this in front of us, and we have a law that is a separate law that is creating certain exemptions, I believe it is our duty here at the Board of Supervisors and at this Land Use Committee to make sure that the city is getting the best deal possible. I do not back down for a second from mandating that we have a robust analysis of every single deal that comes in front of us. It is not the business of the city of San Francisco to be in a position not knowing whether we're getting benefits or getting fleeced on any single deal. And I think we need to do that every single time we have a project in front of us in land use, and we will do that going forward. And that is why I'm actually, more than anything, aside from seeing all of these units being built, excited about this process, because now we're going to have legislation go forward that is supported by so many of our city departments, because I think everybody was incredibly frustrated with how this process moved forward over the last 3 months, that will make sure we have this analysis done. But with that, I will say, with that analysis being done, with the developer spending the time going forward with this, I am very much prepared to support this project as it is, and I think that we need to continue to look hard at these development projects, and again, make sure that the city gets the best deal possible. Building more affordable housing units, absolutely, and making sure that everything we do is on a net basis to the developer, and then let's see it go forward. Let's build these units and build it now. I know this has been a long time in coming. I know it was held up at planning for various reasons for over 6 months last year because of discussions about different types of legislation to carry it forward. 1 week is a blip on the radar screen to make sure that this committee and also the full Board of Supervisors is able to do the right analysis going forward. So with that, again, thank you to everyone. Thank you to my committee members. Thank you to Supervisor Kim, and congratulations in advance. And I'd be prepared to support this as is. Supervisor Peskin.
Thank you, Chair Farrell. I thought the intervening week was very helpful to ask questions of staff, and I also want to thank and welcome the comments of Supervisor Kim just relative to process moving forward, and reiterate my earlier comments. And then not to beat a dead horse, but I do want to say, and I'm fine with the arrangement, how the TDRs are, but to staff, I just want to say, having now looked at Resolution 1614, it does not create a price of $25. It is a resolution, and I'm just saying this to staff because I want to say it on the record, that was aimed at the board several years ago, selling off TDRs off of municipal buildings that previously did not have TDRs, including City Hall, and established a base minimum price of $25. It was not a ceiling. The legislation that's sitting in front of me is very clear. And by the way, there's a Seifel study, the same Libby Seifel who was cited earlier relative to this project, dated June of 2013, that shows TDR sales as high as $37.50. So I just want to put that on the record. And with that, I am happy to vote for the item number 3 and item 4 as amended.
Supervisor Tang.
I just want to ditto comments made earlier as well. I think that just seeing what has transpired in this week, I know could have been very frustrating for all of you, and I absolutely understand that. But I think that just the information that's come to light really highlights something that we all want to work on together moving forward long term for broader policies around these development arrangements. So with that, I'm also happy to support these 2 items moving forward to the full board. I don't know if there's a motion made or if I should make the motion then. Okay, so I'll be happy to make a motion to send forth items 3 and 4 as amended to the full board with positive recommendation.
Motion by Supervisor Tang, second by Supervisor Peskin. We can take those without objection. Madam Clerk, do we have any other business in front of us?
That concludes our business for today.
All right, thanks everyone. We're adjourned.